Ukraine's Abrams destroying the Russian occupiers. December 29, 2025. WWS. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Arya. Join us for the latest from Defense Report. For sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover something that's been lighting up the analysis channels, the performance and the future of the M1 Abrams tank on the Ukrainian battlefield.
Welcome to the debate. Our discussion today really emerges from the intense fighting we're seeing around flashpoints like Pokrovsk and even across the border in the Kursk Oblast, specifically focusing on Ukraine's 47th Mechanized Brigade and their use of this Western heavy armor.
It does. And this deployment, it really marks a critical moment.
It's not just about Ukraine's immediate tactical needs, but it's about the whole concept of the main battle tank. The battlefield today it's saturated with ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and these incredibly cheap, incredibly effective drones.
Right, and that saturation forces a really fundamental question. Are these big, powerful Western MBTs, like the Abrams, still the essential breakthrough weapons they were designed to be? Or have they been, fundamentally pushed into a mobile fire support role because of just how vulnerable they are in this new environment?
That is the question. I'm going to argue that these sophisticated tanks, especially when they're integrated into Ukraine's evolving doctrine, absolutely retain their critical role. They're vital for high-impact objectives and for, frankly, stopping these massive Russian armored assaults in their tracks.
And I'll be taking the position that the battlefield reality, specifically the staggering rate of attrition against cheap FPV drones, proves the M1A1 Abrams is fundamentally ill-suited for this war. Its utility is so limited to these carefully managed support roles that it just doesn't justify the massive cost or the logistical nightmare that comes with it.
Okay, so my core premise, it really rests on the overwhelming combat superiority these tanks show when they're properly used. Even the older M1A1 variants, they give an unbelievable advantage in a direct firefight with Russian armor. We just have to look at the 47th Mechanized Brigade near Stepov. They repelled a reinforced Russian battalion. The reports say they destroyed 21 enemy tanks and 14 other armored vehicles, and they only had to abandon 2 of their own. That's not just a success. That's decisive, disproportionate superiority.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing more of them come in. The recent arrival of 49 M1A1s from Australia, that's enough for a full battalion plus replacements. It proves their strategic value. Units like the 425th Regiment are using them near Pokrovsk right now. At the end of the day, this tank can still kill anything Russia puts on the field. And the best units are adapting them as mobile fortresses to support infantry breakthroughs. They make a material difference.
Okay, Alex, I hear you on that tactical success, and it is impressive. But it has to be seen as a bit of an outlier, right? A localized counterattack, not some kind of sustainable model for a strategic breakthrough. We have to contrast that one fight with the tank's overall record in Ukraine. Reliable reports suggest that something like 87% of the original 31 American Abrams have been lost or severely damaged in less than 2 years.
That kind of attrition rate for a high-value asset for the supposed spear tip suggests a fundamental mismatch between the tank and its environment. And I want to focus on that phrase you used, mobile fortress, because to me that's a quiet admission of failure. The M1A1 wasn't built to be a fortress. It was built for high-intensity, force-on-force warfare under a NATO umbrella with guaranteed air superiority and tons of artillery. Ukraine just can't replicate that. So what you have is this large, hot drone magnet that's incredibly vulnerable to cheap FPVs hitting its weak top armor. Let's start with those attrition figures, because they are just staggering. An 87% loss rate. That's a clear signal that the environment is penalizing this platform. So we have to ask the real question. Is it strategically sound to send in more M1A1s, a system that lacks modern integrated active protection systems against these top attack threats? Even the U.S. Army seems to agree. They decided to close out the M1A2 SEPV4 effort to develop the lighter, more modular M1E3. And why? Because of lessons from Ukraine that highlighted the need for truly integrated protections, not just bolting more cages on. In some really critical ways, The M1A1 is obsolete for this war.
That is an incisive point about the M1E3 program, and it definitely shows where NATO armor is headed. But focusing only on the tank's original design, I think it overlooks the speed of adaptation on the ground. I would argue that attrition is a temporary challenge that's being actively mitigated by innovation. We know for a fact the new Australian tanks have already been modified with reactive armor and these improvised anti-drone cages. The solution isn't to abandon the platform, it's to integrate it better into Ukraine's new combined arms doctrine, a doctrine that emphasizes ISR and electronic warfare, EW, for mutual protection.
But that adaptation, it costs time, it costs resources, and it costs lives. While the 47th Brigade crews are amazing, forcing them to rely on add-on cages is a direct indictment of the platform's survivability. When your multi-million-dollar tank can only operate at night or only when you have jammers and infantry drone screeners right next to it, it stops being a breakthrough weapon. It becomes this highly constrained, high-risk asset.
I'd frame it a bit differently. It's a necessary adaptation driven by the enemy. And even in this constrained role, the Abrams is fulfilling a vital function as superior, high-precision fire support. I mean, just contrast its effectiveness with the sheer waste of older Soviet gear. The 47th, for instance, had to use its T-64s with mine-clearing rollers, and those rollers got destroyed almost instantly because the Russians are just stacking mines 3 or 4 deep. The Abrams, though, it gives you the range and precision to save infantry lives and suppress fortified positions from a safer distance.
That capability is clear, but let's talk about the strategic investment. We hear Ukrainian commanders complaining that their Paladin howitzers can only fire maybe 15 shells a day because of wear and shortages. 15! That's compared to 100 or 150 during the summer counteroffensive.
Right.
So if the Abrams is basically functioning as a very expensive, slow-moving mobile fortress, and most analysts agree that's its role now, does that really justify the huge financial and logistical cost? Especially when those resources could maybe go towards more artillery shells?
It justifies it entirely. Because when a limited assault is launched, the Abrams ensures that the fire support is decisive. It means the mission has a much higher chance of success.
Yet those very constraints tie back to the reality of Ukrainian maneuver. If you look at the analysis of their tactics, an assault is broken down into 7 phases: survey, isolate, degrade, fix, suppress, close and destroy, and consolidate. What's missing? The exploitation phase, the classic job of the tank. This shows that we're in a positional war where deep breakthroughs are almost impossible to sustain. The tanks are forced into a support role because the environment itself makes them constrained.
And we can't ignore the massive logistical tail required to make even that support role possible. The Abrams tanks are enormous. We're talking 67 to 73 tons for the M1A1. Just compare that to a Russian T-90M at 48 tons. That 20-plus ton difference is huge. It affects mobility in the mud, it complicates crossing damaged bridges, and it just exponentially increases the logistical footprint for fuel and parts. Okay, the logistics are a significant challenge, I'll grant you that. But the superior armor and weaponry have to compensate for that investment. The T-90M, which Russia calls the Abrams' main competitor, has proven to be incredibly vulnerable. Ares has confirmed at least 27 losses already. The M1A1 is just a better platform. Dealing with the logistical tail is a solvable problem you have to accept to field a high-quality offensive weapon that protects its crew.
It's more complex than just weight, though. We're talking about the M1's AGT-1500 gas turbine engine. It's notoriously fuel-hungry, it needs what is basically jet fuel, and it demands highly specialized maintenance teams. We've heard reports that some Ukrainian commanders actually prefer their old Soviet tanks for certain missions precisely because they're simple enough to fix in the field. That constant drain of specialized resources on a low-availability asset, it impacts the readiness of the entire force.
The alternative is trading top-tier protection for easy maintenance. When you're facing a reinforced Russian attack, the Abrams armor is what saves the lives of that crew. That complexity is worth the cost.
But that forces us back to the long-term question. If the M1A1 can't perform its intended breakthrough role because of the drone threat, what does that say about the heavy MBT concept for future wars? The development of the M1E3, which prioritizes being lighter and having integrated protection, it suggests NATO itself recognizes the M1A1 design is mismatched for the modern battlefield. Are we just helping Ukraine invest in a legacy platform?
I see it more as evolution than obsolescence. The M1A1 is forcing the evolution of doctrine right now. It's proving superior armor is still critical, but it has to be paired with superior EW and ISR. Ukraine is developing the counter doctrine to protect these assets as we speak, and that will inform the West's next generation of armored warfare. So, to summarize my position, the M1 Abrams, especially with these new supplies and the tactical adaptations we're seeing, remains absolutely essential. Its power in localized heavy engagements, like the massive tank losses it inflicted on the Russians near Stepo, proves the superior Western armor is indispensable for tactical victory and for protecting Ukraine's soldiers.
And my analysis concludes that the evidence, it just overwhelmingly shows that this drone-saturated battle space penalizes heavy, complex systems that lack integrated top attack protection. While it's lethal, the M1A1's attrition rate and logistical demands have forced it into this niche, high-risk fire support role. It's an asset that's become too costly and too complex to risk as the primary breakthrough weapon it was meant to be.
Ultimately, I think the viability of these tanks really hinges on the pace of tactical innovation. It's a race. Can Ukraine adapt the M1 platform and its doctrine faster? Then Russia can deploy cheap drones to destroy them. The stakes in that race really couldn't be higher.
It is a profound moment for armored warfare, and it leaves the question for all of us to weigh. Is the unquestionable power of the M1 worth the strategic price of its vulnerability in 21st century warfare?
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
We'll catch you next time. Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.